History is often written as a long list of men in crowns, but the real architects of chaos were the women who refused to play the victim. We aren't talking about polite tea parties or royal weddings. We are talking about queens who buried their enemies alive, empresses who traded their children's sight for a throne, and a pirate queen who brought 3 empires to their knees. These 10 women didn't just inherit power, they seized it with iron and fire, leaving a trail of bodies and legends that the textbooks are often too terrified to describe in detail. Number 1. Olga of Kiev, the Saint of Vengeance. In the winter of 945 AD, the Drevlian tribe made the worst mistake in medieval history. They murdered Prince Igor of Kiev. Thinking they could easily swallow his kingdom, they sent 20 ambassadors to his widow, Olga, with a generous offer: marry their prince and hand over the keys to the city. They expected a grieving, submissive widow. They got a tactical genius with a taste for blood. Olga welcomed the ambassadors with a smile, telling them to return to their boats and wait for a grand entrance. While they slept, she had her men dig a massive trench. The next morning, she had the ambassadors carried in their boats, honorably, she claimed, right to the edge of the pit, where they were tossed in and buried alive while she watched from above. But Olga was just warming up. She sent word to the Drevlians that she needed their most distinguished men to escort her to their lands. When they arrived, she offered them a relaxing bathhouse to wash away the dust of travel. Once they were inside, she locked the doors and burned the building to the ground. Still unsatisfied, she traveled to the Drevlian capital for a funeral feast for her husband. She encouraged the 5,000 Drevlian soldiers to drink until they passed out, then ordered her personal guard to massacre every single one of them in their sleep. For the grand finale, she besieged their city and asked for a tiny tribute: 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows from each house. The citizens agreed, relieved. That night, she tied burning sulfur to the birds' feet and released them. They flew back to their nests in the thatched roofs, and the entire city ignited at once. For this devotion to her family and her later conversion, the church made her a saint. Number 2. Caterina Sforza, the Tiger of Forli. Caterina Sforza was the 15th century tiger of Italy who lived by the blade and died by the pen. Born as the illegitimate daughter of the Duke of Milan, she was raised in a world where power was a blood sport. When her husband was assassinated in a palace coup and her children were taken hostage by the rebels, the conspirators thought they had won. They dragged her children to the foot of her fortress walls and told Caterina that if she didn't surrender the castle immediately, they would slit the throats of her heirs in front of her. Most mothers would have crumbled. Caterina instead climbed to the top of the battlements, lifted her heavy silk skirts, and screamed down at them, "Do it! I have the equipment to make more." The rebels were so psychologically shattered by her cold-blooded defiance that they completely lost their nerve. They didn't kill the children, and Caterina eventually regained control of her lands. Her life remained a whirlwind of warfare and alchemy. She spent her nights in a lab creating poisons and her days on horseback. When the infamous Cesare Borgia, the man who inspired the prince, came to conquer her city, she personally donned armor and fought on the front lines alongside her soldiers. Even after she was finally captured and sent to a Roman dungeon, she didn't stop. She attempted to assassinate the Pope by sending him letters dipped in a slow-acting, skin-contact poison. She was a woman who didn't know the meaning of the word surrender. Number 4. Xing Yi Sao, the Pirate Empress. The most successful pirate in the history of the world wasn't a bearded man from the Caribbean. She was a former prostitute from the South China Sea. Xing Yi Sao started her career on a floating brothel, but when the notorious pirate captain Xing Yi proposed to her in 1801, she didn't just say yes, she demanded a 50% share of his fleet and equal command as a wedding gift. He agreed, and together they built the Red Flag Fleet. When he died in a typhoon, she didn't step down. She seduced his adopted son to secure her position and grew the fleet until she commanded 40,000 pirates and 1,800 ships.
Her company was larger than the navies of most European nations. She ran her fleet with the discipline of a modern corporation and the brutality of a tyrant. Her legal code was legendary. If a pirate raped a female captive, he was executed. If the sex was consensual, both were beheaded. If a pirate stole from the communal treasury or disobeyed an order, he was decapitated on the spot. She became so powerful that she defeated the Chinese Imperial Navy, the British Royal Navy, and the Portuguese in open combat. Eventually, the Chinese government realized they couldn't sink her, so they begged for peace. She negotiated a deal that sounds like a movie script. She got to keep all her stolen loot, she received a government pension, and she was allowed to retire in peace. She spent her final years running a successful gambling house and died in her own bed at the age of 69, the only pirate queen to beat the house. Number 4. Queen Nzinga, the human throne. In the 17th century, the Portuguese were busy carving up West Africa for the slave trade, but they hit a wall in the form of Queen Nzinga of Ndongo. She was a master of psychology and a brilliant military strategist. During a high-stakes peace negotiation in 1622, the Portuguese governor tried to humiliate her by only providing one chair, his own. He expected Nzinga to sit on the floor like a beggar or stand like a servant. Nzinga didn't say a word. She locked eyes with the governor, snapped her fingers, and one of her royal attendants immediately dropped to all fours on the floor. She sat on the attendant's back as if it were a plush velvet throne and conducted the entire meeting from that position, never once breaking eye contact with the stunned governor. Nzinga wasn't just about symbolism, she was a survivor. She converted to Christianity to secure an alliance with the Portuguese, then immediately converted back to her traditional faith once the deal was no longer useful. When the Portuguese eventually betrayed her, she led her people into the interior, conquered the neighboring kingdom of Matamba, and turned it into a sanctuary for escaped slaves. She personally led her guerrilla armies into battle well into her 60s, using the dense jungle to decimate European columns. She was a woman who understood that power is not given, it is performed, and she performed it better than anyone in the Atlantic world. Number 5. Kutulan, the wrestling princess. Kutulan was the great-great-granddaughter of Genghis Khan and possibly the most formidable woman in Mongolian history. In a culture that prized strength above all else, she was the ultimate champion. She famously declared that she would never marry a man unless he could defeat her in a wrestling match. If the suitor lost, he had to forfeit 100 horses to her. According to Marco Polo, who was fascinated by her, she was so skilled that she ended up with a personal herd of over 10,000 horses and exactly 0 husbands. Men came from all over the world to try their luck, including a prince who bet 1,000 horses on a single match, only to be tossed into the dirt like a rag doll. But Kutulan wasn't just a sportswoman, she was her father's most trusted military advisor and his greatest secret weapon on the battlefield. During combat, she was known for a terrifying tactic. She would ride into the thick of the enemy lines, pick a high-ranking soldier, snatch him off his horse with one hand, and carry him back to her own lines to be held for ransom. She was so dominant that her father tried to name her his official successor over all his sons. Though she eventually married a man of her own choosing, without a wrestling match for political necessity, she remained a legend of female autonomy in a world defined by nomadic warfare.
Number 6. Wu Zetian, China's only female emperor. Wu Zetian's life story is the blueprint for every political thriller ever written. She entered the imperial court at age 14 as a low-ranking concubine for the emperor. Usually, when an emperor died, his concubines were sent to a monastery to live out their lives in silence. Wu had other plans. She seduced the emperor's son, returned to the palace, and began a systematic purge of everyone in her way. The most chilling story, though debated by historians as potential propaganda, is that she strangled her own newborn daughter and framed the current empress for the murder. The scandal worked. The empress was executed, and Wu took her place.
By the age of 67, she did something no other woman in thousands of years of Chinese history ever achieved. She declared herself emperor, or Huangdi, a title reserved exclusively for men. She didn't just want to be the power behind the throne, she wanted the throne itself. To keep it, she established a terrifying network of secret police and encouraged citizens to spy on one another. However, she wasn't just a tyrant, she was a brilliant administrator. She expanded the empire, made the civil service exams based on merit rather than family names, and improved the lives of the peasantry. She was a cold, calculating genius who understood that in the Forbidden City, you were either the hammer or the nail. Number 7. Tamiris, the Conqueror's End. Cyrus the Great was the founder of the Persian Empire and one of the most successful conquerors to ever live. He had crushed Babylon and Lydia, but his streak ended when he tried to invade the lands of the Massagetae, a nomadic tribe ruled by Queen Tamiris. Cyrus tried to use trickery first. He left a camp filled with wine for the nomadic warriors, who weren't used to alcohol, to find. When they got drunk and passed out, Cyrus's army moved in, slaughtered them, and captured Tamiris's son. Heartbroken and humiliated, the prince took his own life in the Persian camp. Tamiris didn't fall into despair, she fell into a rage. She sent Cyrus a message that is still famous today. "I will give you more blood than you can drink." In the massive battle that followed, the Massagetae horse archers completely annihilated the Persian legions. Cyrus was killed in the chaos. Tamiris had his body brought to her, ordered her men to cut off his head, and then dunked it into a leather wineskin filled with human blood. She looked at the severed head of the most powerful man on earth and said, "Now drink your fill." She is the mother of all "don't mess with my kids" stories, and she remains a symbol of nomadic defiance. Number 8. Hatshepsut, the king who was a woman. Hatshepsut didn't just want to rule Egypt, she wanted to be the pharaoh, a role that was cosmically defined as male. When her husband died and her stepson was too young to rule, she stepped in as regent, but she quickly decided that temporary wasn't enough. She declared herself king and had herself depicted in statues with a male torso and the ceremonial false beard of the pharaohs. She wasn't trying to hide her gender, she was simply claiming the full authority of the office. She told her people that she was the literal daughter of the god Amun, giving her a divine right to the throne that no man could challenge. Her reign was a masterpiece of stability. While other pharaohs focused on bloody conquests, Hatshepsut focused on wealth. She launched a massive naval expedition to the mysterious land of Punt, bringing back gold, ebony, and live myrrh trees, the first time in history a foreign tree was successfully transplanted. She built the stunning mortuary temple at Deir al-Bahari, one of the architectural wonders of the ancient world. After she died, her stepson tried to erase her from history by chiseling her face off every monument, terrified that her successful female reign would ruin the natural order of male kingship. He failed. Her name eventually re-emerged from the sand as one of Egypt's greatest rulers. Number 9. Boudica, the Roman nightmare. When the Roman Empire expanded into Britain, they expected the local tribes to bow down and pay taxes. When the king of the Iceni died, he left his kingdom to his daughters and the Roman emperor, hoping to keep the peace. The Romans responded by ignoring the will, seizing all the land, publicly flogging the king's widow, Boudica, and assaulting her daughters. It was the single most expensive mistake the Roman governors ever made. Boudica didn't just cry, she raised an army of 100,000 furious Britons and went on a scorched earth rampage that nearly forced Rome to abandon Britain entirely. She didn't just fight battles, she deleted cities. She burned Colchester to the ground, then moved on to London, Londinium, where she massacred every Roman citizen who couldn't escape. The fire she started was so intense that modern archaeologists can still find a Boudica destruction layer, a thick band of red and black burnt ash deep in the soil of London. She killed an estimated 80,000 people before the Roman legions finally managed to regroup and defeat her through superior discipline. Rather than be taken alive and paraded through Rome in chains, she drank poison. Today, her statue stands right next to the British Parliament, a permanent reminder of the woman who almost broke the Roman Empire. Number 10. Amani-Reines, the One-Eyed Queen. Kandake Amani-Reines was the warrior queen of the Kingdom of Kush, modern-day Sudan, who did what almost no one else could. She fought the Roman Empire to a standstill. In 30 BC, after the Romans conquered Egypt, they started eyeing the gold mines to the south. Amani-Reines didn't wait for them to attack. She led a surprise invasion into Roman Egypt, capturing several major cities and toppling statues of Emperor Augustus. She even took the bronze head from one of Augustus's statues and brought it back to her capital as a trophy. The Romans sent a massive counterattack, and the war dragged on for 5 years. Amani-Reines was on the front lines for all of it, losing one of her eyes in a skirmish but refusing to leave the battlefield. Eventually, the Romans realized that conquering Kush would be too expensive and too bloody. They signed a peace treaty that was incredibly favorable to her. Kush remained independent and didn't have to pay tribute. To celebrate her victory, she buried the bronze head of Augustus under the steps of a temple dedicated to the god of victory. For 2,000 years, every person who entered that temple had to literally step on the face of the Roman emperor. She is the mother of all "don't mess with my kids" stories, and she remains a symbol of nomadic defiance. History loves to tell us that women were just background characters, waiting in the wings while men made the big decisions. But as these 10 rulers prove, when women took the stage, they didn't just play the game, they broke it. From the frozen rivers of Russia to the burning streets of Roman London, these queens and empresses showed that power doesn't care about gender. It only cares about who is brave, ruthless, and brilliant enough to hold on to it. So the next time you think of the gentle women of the past, remember the one who buried ambassadors alive or the one who made an emperor her footstool.